It is 10 o'clock. Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica from the 104.5 The Zone studios. The Titans were on the practice field yesterday for OTAs, and head coach Brian Callahan met with the media after practice and detailed where the Titans are with the installation of the new offense with quarterback Will Levis.
Where we're at in our process now is more about teaching the system and what's expected, and then you add the situational layers as you get more comfortable with the install. So we're about done with the installation part of the offense, and now it becomes more of a memory and recall and starting to pair a lot more things together. So it's coming together at this point, and then by training camp, we should be ready to roll, and guys should know what to do and how to do it.
Brian, you walk a fine line.
In NFL news, the Dolphins and wide receiver Jalen Waddle have reportedly agreed to a 3-year extension worth over $84 million, $76 million in guaranteed money. Waddle has gone over 1,000 yards in each of his first 3 seasons in Miami with 18 total touchdowns. Nashville Soccer Club won the first game of Rumba Muntali's tenure as interim manager Wednesday with a 2-0 win at Cincinnati, ending a 7-game Cincinnati win streak. Jack Mayer and Jacob Schaffelberg, the goal scorers, both assisted by Hani Mukhtar. Nashville returns home hosting New England on Saturday. NHL playoffs, the Oilers rallied after trailing 2-0 to win 5-2 over the Dallas Stars and even the Western Conference Finals at 2 games apiece. For lighter foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
I was reading a Bleacher Report article this morning about the 10 best and worst trades in the last decade of football, and the Tennessee Titans were featured in that Bleacher Report article because, of course, the A.J. Brown trade is one of the only trades of the 10 that they ranked, Lucas, that received an outright F. And then I head out to the practice field yesterday, and I'm watching Calvin Ridley dice him up. I'm watching DeAndre Hopkins make plays. I'm watching Traylon Burks look like again, for another offseason, an actual NFL wide receiver, along with Tyler Boyd, Kyle Phillips, Kyrus Jackson, even Mason Kinsey out there making some plays. And I think that the Titans fans have to, or may have not realized yet, just how much more charmed their existence at that position has become. We are going to talk about the OTAs this morning. Welcome in. We got Jackson. We got Lucas. We got your phone calls. 615-737-1045 is the number if you want to join the discussion. We'd be happy to have you. Dan Pizzuta is going to join us to talk some quarterbacks here in just about 10 minutes from now. And speaking of quarterbacks, there is a very in-depth piece on the education, as it were, of Titans quarterback Will Levis that we will have the opportunity to dissect as well. Has it washed over you yet how much better your wide receivers are after the depths that you reached and ultimately got a bunch of people fired?
Yes, I think it is crystallizing at the moment. And Calvin Ridley apparently stole the show yesterday.
Again.
I know DeAndre Hopkins was not on the practice field. Tyler Boyd was, but seems like everybody's talking about Calvin Ridley as we get into our week 2 OT takeaways.
Well, God, I thought that was only a 1-week thing.
Why?
That's a great question. It's terrible of me to just assume that I could ignore something terrible and that it would eventually go away. You're right. Those things tend to linger around here like a bad smell. So very happy to still have the OT takeaways to deliver for people today. Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me. Here's the thing, though. And I wonder how many media people who are out there at practice on a regular basis would admit to this as well. Lucas, I have not watched hardly any of the defensive backs because L'Jarius Sneed hasn't been available. Now, Awuzie was out there yesterday. Roger McCreary has been practicing.
Caleb Farley allegedly made a play yesterday.
He sure did. I can confirm that there was a play made on a practice field, on a football field by Caleb Farley, not in pads, but in a, football attire. But I haven't watched hardly any of the defensive backs. I've been hovering around the offensive line and the wide receivers, and by extension then the quarterbacks, all spring long. So I feel like I've not been paying enough attention, or I need to start paying more attention to, for example, tight ends, off-ball linebackers, positions that are a little less sexy or maybe just a little slightly less interesting on the scale of intrigue that Titans fans have about the various parts and pieces that their roster is currently comprised of. So it's been hard for me after the first two practices to not just come away with huge Calvin Ridley takeaways, because that's who I'm watching for the bulk of practice, and that does seem to be the case. But he's just consistently making plays for the quarterback. And the thing that I brought up yesterday with Cosell, because we did another episode of The Install. It's available for you on the 104.5 The Zone YouTube channel. We're working our way through the AFC South right now, but we're working some Titans news and notes into it as well. And I said, Greg, we've been talking about the Titans and the way that they ask their wide receivers to win for the better part of 6 years. Now, when I say that, when the way that they ask their wide receivers to win, what comes to mind to you? Anything? Anything in particular? The way that they are playing offense and the way, within the scope of their scheme, that they are asking the wide receivers to win their one-on-one matchups.
Well, it's about quick release, right? Getting the ball out quickly.
To an extent, but it's also been incumbent upon the wide receivers, I would say at a higher rate than average, to win on these isolation routes where it's just you and the defensive back. Now, it's the NFL. You're going to have to make contested catches. I'm not saying that this is going to completely keep Titans wide receivers from ever having to make another contested catch in their life. But even in the 7-on-7 work, Lucas, where you can see how wide open the windows that the quarterbacks are throwing to a spot, the way that we talk about Tua. Tua is an anticipatory thrower. Phillip Rivers, an anticipatory thrower. But what makes that easier on guys like that, and quarterbacks in general, is if you can find ways to scheme these wide open windows for the wide receivers to run through, the quarterback throws to a spot, and the wide receiver is there, ready for the ball upon delivery. That is what I'm seeing in the very, very early phases right now on the practice field, and it has to just be such a sigh of relief to Titans fans to hear that, they're not just going to have to be relied upon to create separation unto themselves. The scheme is going to further help them create that separation. Outside of A.J. Brown's, and they ran it with NWI, they ran it with Corey Davis for a while here, that bang play action, that hit your back foot, let the ball go, play action crosser that we've seen A.J. and Corey and to an extent NWI run a million times until what happened? The safety just started sitting on it, and you couldn't throw the play action route, and then it seems like half the offense evaporated because that was one of their greatest sources of explosive plays, catch and run. The team was built that way. Jonnu, AJ, Corey, those kind of players. So watching Ridley, how much easier it's being made on Ridley and how much easier Ridley and the offense are making it on the quarterbacks in general. Because even Malik made some nice plays yesterday, and I hesitate to say it that way, even Malik, but you know what I'm saying.
Well, I think you're just watching actual number one wide receivers in the NFL for the first time in quite some time. Like, how many of those have you actually watched at practice
in my
apart
life?
From A.J. Brown?
Oh, on the roster, you mean? Because there was a time, I remember, this was probably, who was the quarterback? Jameis. So it was probably 2018 when the Titans and Bucks had joint training camp practices here. And the Bucks at the time had Deshaun Jackson, had Mike Evans.
Yep.
Had, I want to say Godwin was on that roster. Anyway, their third was pretty good too. And I just remember staring out there on the practice field, watching Corey Davis, Taywan Taylor, and a bunch of other slaps, respectfully, run around and being like, oh my God, that's what professional wide receivers look like. That's a big difference from what I'm used to seeing.
So apart from A.J. Brown,
that's been it. And Julio.
And Julio in practice, you haven't seen that in your time as a Titans reporter.
And Julio, even A.J. did not practice a ton.
Right. And when Julio was on the practice field, right? Now the Titans have two of those. And I know DeAndre Hopkins was not out there yesterday. He was giving sage advice to the top 50 recruits in the country. Did you see this?
Speaking at the On3 thing?
At the On3 Elite Series happening in Nashville
Him
this
and Will
week.
Compton, because, of course, when I associate athletic greatness and accomplishment in sport, I think of Will Compton alongside DeAndre Hopkins.
So D-Hop was not out there. I mean, in terms of attendance, who were the most notable omissions? D-Hop, Snead, Jeffrey Simmons,
Sweat,
Nicholas Petit-Frere.
Sweat, by the way, the only rookie that hadn't signed a deal yet. And not the end of the world, but any excuse that people have to hyper-focus on this dude, beyond, the obvious reasons, it's just another thing for people to talk about Sweat about in the offseason.
Is there any, because we're not given any clarification on guys, whether they're rehabbing, whether they're just not there, working on their own, right?
I know he's in town. I know he's here.
It all falls under that umbrella, though, right? They're either rehabbing or doing stuff on their own. We don't know which is assigned to what. Is there any reason for concern with any of these guys that are not out at OTAs, whether that be injury or otherwise?
I want to know just how hurt NPF was. And of course, that's something I'll never know unless he just outright tells us. Or maybe they'll be more comfortable talking about the extent of an injury after the fact. Because Traylon was pretty comfortable talking about concussions and knee sprains yesterday and the idea of how he's working through it. But NPF, since the surgery, I'd just be curious because it's a shoulder. Shoulders are tough. Shoulders are really tough. And he's not the first offensive lineman to have a shoulder procedure or whatever. But I would just be curious to know how far along he actually is because that affects a starting job for this roster. One would think he's going to come in some form or fashion as the starting right tackle, provided that he's healthy enough. He doesn't have to be healthy. He doesn't have to be healthy right now, but we're really not that far away from training camp.
Yeah, and
right around the corner.
Feels like it would benefit NPF to be involved right now in what the O-line is doing.
He has to have some kind of ramp up.
There's just so much stuff. They have so much stuff over there. So many things.
So much room for activities.
Sleds and tools. Yeah, room for activities. The things the O-line had. I heard Ramon talking about it this morning. Just all of...
Oh, was that his first time out there?
I don't know if it was, but Ramon had a really good, and Ramon, Kayla, and Will posted the video on 104.5 The Zone's YouTube page, so go watch it, subscribe while you're there, just detailing just how different it is watching the offensive line with no pads, with no live reps or contact, but still how different it is watching them operate and work and be coached and what they're working with under Bill Callahan as opposed to the previous staff.
This is a joke I saw somebody make on Twitter a couple of weeks ago. Basically, the idea that Keith Carter, the former Titans offensive line coach, and then following him, Jason Hoteling, who was here for a season, that it was just like the blocking pad, and one guy have a blocking pad, the other guy have a blocking pad, or be tasked with blocking against the blocking pad, and it's just turbo set, and it's just the cadence, and that's it. That's the drill. And, I'm sure there's more nuances there, but it's turbo set for 2 hours and 6 years of turbo set, and then all of a sudden, you're looking at these specifically engineered and designed all manner of different sleds, all manner of different types of sleds, as you said, one that creates an actual pocket for them to have to protect. The individual sleds, of course, Bertha, they have one that's just kind of like a long plank-looking sled, and I'm not sure the difference where they seem to be hitting it as if they're there to help and then taking off to the second level as if they're going to go block up a linebacker or a defensive back afterwards, and the way that they had it structured yesterday. But NPF, to your point, Radens is benefiting from the fact that he is working with Bill Callahan right now and NPF is not. Leroy Watson is benefiting from the fact that he continues to work with Bill Callahan right now and Jalen Duncan is not, because Jalen Duncan also not available at practice, at least in the 2 practices that we've been out there and available for. So all of this stuff, even without the pads, does affect the level of competition and how quickly they're able to get up to speed. Because this is not football 101 that Bill Callahan is out there coaching. He gave you maybe a day for football 101, and then for the guys that don't get it, he's out there. He's making sure that they know when their reps suck, how bad they suck. And I don't know that they can expect that to change anytime soon. Who was it? Skoronski was talking about some guys that he trained with, warning him a little bit about Bill Callahan and how intense and how hard of a coach he is. But that's how you achieve greatness to a certain extent. And there is no question that he is great at what it is that he does. Coming up next, speaking of greatness, how can the quarterback Will Levis achieve greatness? We're going to talk to Dan Pizzuta, who's done some good analysis on several quarterbacks, including Will Levis. That's coming up next. Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. 615-737-1045 is the number. We're out at Hattie B's. As a matter of fact, next week, their Charlotte location. You can come hang out with us over there on the west side of town, close to Sylvan Park. We'd be happy to see you. Come get some tenders, some whole wings, some pimento mac and cheese, some greens, all kinds of good stuff. Are you more a banana pudding type of person, or are you a peach cobbler type of person? I feel like those are very, very specific. Like, I feel like I can tell a lot about you based on how you answer this question.
I've been banana pudding my entire life.
Okay.
But I'm a lot closer to peach cobbler now than I was before, but I'd still go banana pudding.
Okay. I'm for sure peach cobbler. It's nothing against bananas, but like too much banana in whatever I'm eating. Like, I can do a little banana, but like I can't just eat a whole banana on a regular basis. Like, it's too much banana. You know what I'm saying? Banana pudding, always good, especially at Hattie B's because they put the vanilla wafers in it. That's the key. Anyway, Dan Pizzuta is here listening us to talk about food when we're supposed to be talking about quarterbacks. I'm sorry, Dan, are you a peach cobbler person or a banana pudding person?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a wrong answer there. I would probably lean peach cobbler for this, but I don't think you can go wrong either way.
Okay, well, we will. You need to take a position. This is sports talk radio. We have to embrace debate, so I'm very disappointed in you right out of the gate.
You get a free dessert with the Hattie B's app, Dan Pizzuta.
I'm very sorry. All right, peach cobbler, and there's absolutely no debate about it.
Yes, there we are. He's going to be on First Take soon. We can see it. Dan Pizzuta here with us on 104.5 The Zone. You can read him at the 33rdteam.com. Really enjoy the deep dives that he does into the numbers and how it marries itself with the film analysis. He's been doing it for quite some time for both Sharp Football and Football Outsiders, which have always been great resources for those of us who are less informed. Dan, when you break down, I guess, how do you go about that process, marrying the film with the numbers? Because I feel like in today's discussion among just NFL fans, you're either somebody who likes watching the football and you want to hear about the numbers, or you're somebody who wants to know as much as humanly possible about how the numbers dictate the tendencies of the teams.
Yeah, that's definitely a interesting kind of line that a lot of some people are trying to toe a little bit, but I'm just kind of fascinated in trying to find out as much information as possible. I'm definitely one of those people. So it's one of those things where I think they both inform each other a bit. There's a lot of times where I'll be watching something and I'll be looking to see, do the numbers match up with that? And then there's other times where I'm kind of, diving into some numbers, and then I want to go to the film just to kind of see why those numbers are saying what there is. And I think it's such a good marriage of both of those things to really find out why and get the biggest picture of why some of these things are happening on the field. And I don't think there's one perfect way to look at it. And I think each one informs the other. And that's why I really enjoy diving into the game kind of the way I've been able to do it the past couple of years.
How much smarter are we about quarterbacks and the way that we watch them, the way that we talk about them, the way that we study them now versus even, 5 to 10 years ago, with all the resources and all the different ways that analytics has allowed us to learn more about these individual players and how it is that they succeed and how it is that they don't succeed?
Yeah, I think we're certainly doing a better job now than they were. I think we continue to improve. I still think there's places where, we still kind of have a bit of a gray area. I think when you look at, and it might come down to in Tennessee this year, where you kind of look at the Shanahan McVay tree of offenses, and a lot of those kind of systems are making life easier on quarterbacks. So I think we are kind of seeing the floor at quarterback, I think, is the highest it's been in a while. But I think we're also kind of having the hardest time that we've had separating exactly what the quarterback is doing with some of those schemes specifically. So I think in some ways we are definitely better at looking at what quarterbacks are doing and kind of getting the full picture of what they are producing in an offense. And we can kind of talk about their strengths and we know what kind of traits that we should be looking for at quarterback. I think a little better than what we have been in the past. But I think we also are a little more jumbled in, who is responsible for some of this production than we have been in the past. And I think that does, just kind of create, good things to talk about and good things to dive into. So there's no shortage of content there.
NFL analyst Dan Pizzuta of the 33rd Team is here with us on 104.5 The Zone. You can read his articles, like the 7 potential breakout players for 2024, at the33rdteam.com. So you do have an AFC South quarterback in there, but it's not Will Levis. It's Anthony Richardson. And we have talked about him a million times over. He has played so little, not just because of his career in the NFL today, but obviously being in the Southeast. We talk a great deal of SEC football. Him against Tennessee was certainly one of the more entertaining games of his collegiate career. But there's just such a small sample size of both college and professional tape with which to analyze this player. And I'm wondering how you project. Is it just because there's such a non-existent baseline for him that a breakout is more likely possible? How'd you go about articulating that in the piece?
Yeah, it's one of those things where this is one of those players where if you look at the traits of what he does and what some successful quarterbacks have done before him, I think that's kind of where it matches up. He came out and like you said, there's not a lot of experience there, but I think labeling him as raw as a quarterback doesn't really get the full picture of what he's doing, because I think he controls the quarterback position fairly well when he has been on the field. I think he has a very good pocket presence. I don't think he panics a lot when he's under pressure. He kind of has the ability to maneuver in the pocket, which I think helps a lot. And so you see kind of what some of his best plays were last year in the times that he was on the field. And then it's kind of an overall package going into that Shane Steichen offense that I think has really been proven to mold to the strengths of whatever quarterback it is. So watching what the Colts did late in the season with Gardner Minshew and kind of shifting from an Anthony Richardson offense to a Gardner Minshew offense kind of made me feel better overall about what a future Anthony Richardson offense could be, because I think they'll just kind of mold things to really help and get the strengths out of that offense. So it's kind of one of those marriages of player and scheme that I really like a lot, and I kind of have high expectations for going into this year.
Well, it's an interesting thing that you bring up about Richardson and the way he manages pressure. I know Greg Cosell does a little work for the 33rd Team as well. Greg and I do a podcast every week, and we were talking specifically about AFC South quarterbacks of late. Lawrence is somebody who's come up a lot as a part of this discussion because it feels like all of a sudden it should have been the Jags' division to lose for several years, and the Texans have immediately passed them by. Trevor Lawrence is one of the most confusing figures in the NFL to me, but I when I watch him, and again, I'm untrained with the analysis despite covering an NFL football team, so I'm not going to pretend to know every bit of the mechanics that require a quarterback to operate at a high level. But I can't help but when I watch Trevor Lawrence, see how much he gets sped up by the pressure in particular and how often it leads to those erroneous throws.
Yeah, and I think that's been one of the biggest problems of Jacksonville really since Lawrence came in, and they've tried to scheme around that to a sense. Late in the 2022 season, they kind of really made it all about quick game. Trevor was doing 1 and 0 step drops, probably getting the ball out as quick as possible, and that helped stop some of the pressure that was coming in from that offensive line, but it also kind of stopped explosive plays from happening. So a lot of that offense was very condensed into the short area of the field. We kind of hoped in 2023 that would kind of expand a little bit, but it still seemed like they didn't have a lot of trust in that offensive line. So they went back to kind of the quick game and really a lot of like stop routes too. It's not things that have these receivers are really, crossing the field. You think of, the Doug Peterson offense back in Philadelphia had a lot of crossers. It was room for these receivers to run after the catch. That really hasn't been the case in Jacksonville. So it's a lot of kind of these stop routes that don't have really potential to get explosive plays. So then when it gets to 3rd and long, then Trevor's kind of speeding up and really trying to make things happen. And that's where some of the mistakes have been. That's where a lot of his interceptions have been. It was kind of a Dak Prescott thing that we had in 2022 also, where most of his interceptions were things where he was trying to make something happen on 3rd down because 1st and 2nd down didn't really go well because of the play calling. So I think Trevor just kind of has a lot of that weight on his shoulders. We'll see what 2024 is going to be because now they do have Gabe Davis. They drafted Brian Thomas. Those are 2 guys who should stretch the field vertically. Calvin Ridley was supposed to be that guy last year, and then they didn't really treat him like that. So I think with a more vertical offense a little bit, they might be able to get a little more of that explosion and just kind of in these rhythm of the offense, have some of those deeper throws down the field. But to this point, it's been a very condensed offense. And I think that's put a lot of weight on Trevor trying to just kind of make things happen. And that's where the mistakes have come from.
Well, I'm glad you bring up Ridley just for no other reason but to transition a bit to the Titans because he brought that up with us in his introductory press conference. The idea of being, he didn't use the word miscast, but he felt like he wasn't being used in a way that maximized his skill set. Now, for the audience, he's a very versatile player. He can run a wide, or his route craft is excellent, and he can be deployed in a variety of different ways, as he was in Atlanta when he was working with Julio Jones. And with Jacksonville, it felt a little different because they were asking him, Dan, it felt like to be their true blue X wide receiver down in and down out. They played him a little bit in the slot and stuff like that. They moved him around a little bit, but it wasn't quite to the extent that we've seen the best version of Calvin Ridley. And when watching him, and I don't know how you kind of factor this into your analysis, when watching him, I'm trying to figure out how much of it is just rust because the guy hasn't played really football for an extended period of time over the course of the better part of 2 seasons. How much of it is scheme? How much of it is the quarterback? And how much of it is the drops that they were dealing with at the time?
Yeah, I think it was probably a little bit of everything there. It did seem like there was, a little rust that he shook off, I think, throughout the year. But I think, again, just kind of going back to what that Jacksonville offense was, and I don't think they trusted things to develop down the field late in the down. So a lot of those deep throws were kind of very quick. It was a lot of just go routes that they have a very small probability of being completed in general. So it wasn't a lot of, routes that Ridley has been, doing well, that he's done well in the past, like, the post corners, even double moves. I don't think they felt like they had the time to get him there. So it was, a lot of, stops and comebacks and things. So I think in Tennessee now, there is going to be much more of an emphasis, with Will Levis, who had the highest average depth of target in the league. That is going to be a vertical offense, probably will continue to be so. So I would expect him to look more a little bit like he did in that late stage in Atlanta when he was, really killing on some of those vertical routes, some of those digs over the middle of the field. I think that is going to be more of the role of what he's going to look like in Tennessee. I think it's going to look much more like Atlanta Calvin Ridley than it was Jacksonville Calvin Ridley.
Dan Pizzuta of the 33rd team is here talking wide receivers and quarterback tape with us on 104.5 The Zone.
So with that in mind, Dan, about Calvin Ridley and how he fits into this offense and DeAndre Hopkins as well, obviously Tyler Boyd, the late addition to that wide receiver room, did that move by the Titans to pick up Boyd change any preconceived notions you might have had on how Ridley and or Hopkins would have been used in this Brian Callahan system?
Yeah, a little bit, because Boyd is such a slot-only type of player. I think he, had the highest or second highest rate of snaps in the slot among wide receivers last year. So he has kind of a very specific role that he plays. I think the best version of Hopkins and Ridley is kind of when you can move them around a little more. I thought some of the best stuff that Hopkins did last year was when he was moved in the slot for about 20% of his snaps. I think he kind of just has that feel, able to get separation off the line. That works really well when he had some of those, two-way goes out of the slot. When they're going to be in 11 personnel with Boyd on the field, you can't really slide one of those guys into the slot because that's where Boyd has to play. So I think it does kind of congest that offense in a little bit in some of the versatility you could have had otherwise. But I don't think Boyd is going to be, in 85% of the snaps type player. So I do think there is going to be a little more versatility kind of changing in and out of some of the personnel that Tennessee is using. But I do think the best versions of Hopkins and Ridley is when you can move them around. So I do expect that to happen, but I think they're going to be stuck on the outside a bit when it is a Hopkins, Boyd, Ridley 11 personnel package that's on the field.
Dan, forgive me, but you sound almost slightly disappointed that you won't get to see DeAndre Hopkins in that role, theoretically, with Tyler Boyd just being on this roster in 2024.
Dan, do you know how tortured this fan base is with wide receivers? They're just happy to have the three of them here. Are you kidding?
Yeah, no, I don't blame it. No, and it's going to be great because I think DeAndre Hopkins was still very good on the outside. I just think as he ages, his best role might be to, shift inside. I think we've seen that from some older wide receivers over the past couple of years, where as they age, they kind of get a little better as that really big slot role where they can kind of use the nuances of route running more than just trying to, beat guys down the field one-on-one down the sideline. So I do think we're still going to see a bit of that this year. But yeah, like you said, it is definitely a good group of wide receivers. 3 wide is probably, what these Titans are going to run out of most often. So I don't think it's going to take anything away from what DeAndre Hopkins can do. I was really impressed with him overall last year, what he was still able to do. He was top 20 in yards per route run among wide receivers, which I think a lot of people kind of wrote off about after what he was doing with Arizona. And I think that was kind of one of those things where you see how sticking him to one side in one role and only allowing him to do a very specific thing kind of stunted what he was able to do production-wise. So I think they were able to move him around a little bit last year. I think that really helped him. He still has it. He's still one of the better wide receivers in the league. So wherever he is put, I think he is still going to be an asset for Tennessee this year.
Obviously, a very interesting quarterback division, the AFC South, 3 of them heading into their second year. So where does your intrigue level in Will Levis and how he will fit into this Brian Callahan offense kind of stack up with the intrigue that you have at the other 3 quarterbacks?
Yeah, I'm interested because there are a lot of things to like about Levis, and I think if you put together just kind of a highlight film of some of his best throws from last year, like you would look at Will Levis and be like, yeah, this is a guy. He was really good in a clean pocket, and I think that is going to be kind of the key of what his success is going to be and how well they can keep him in a clean pocket. I think you look at Tennessee's offensive line last year, probably easily the worst in the league. I think the quarterback didn't always help make that easier on the offensive line either. So I think both of those factors kind of coming in created a lot of pressure. Levis is not a guy who I think has a natural pocket feel a little bit. So he does leave himself susceptible to some hits in the pocket when pressure is coming. He doesn't always feel it. So there are some kind of blindside hits that end up kind of wrecking a play. But if they can keep him clean, allow him to work from that clean pocket and push the ball down the field, that's where some of his best stuff comes from. And I think there was, if you go to some of the empty packages that Tennessee did last year, I think that's where Levis was a little more in control of how he controlled kind of the pressure coming in, could get the ball out quickly, still push the ball down the field. I think when you have Callahan coming in, comes from Cincinnati, where the early years in Cincinnati, they used empty a lot when there were, the 5 wide, no running back out in the field. In the backfield to allow Burrow to control that offensive line. They got the ball out very quickly, and that's how they did it. I also think there's a bit of, Matthew Stafford in the Rams when they kind of changed their offense. They used empty a lot, but they pushed the ball down the field. That was a very vertical empty set. So I think they're going to kind of combine a little bit of those two offenses and have Levis kind of be in control there. And that's, I think, one of the more interesting things that I want to see from Levis is how he controls those kind of packages and what kind of packages Brian Callahan is going to put together to kind of get the strengths out of Will Levis. Because I think there are good high upside plays in there. It's just trying to get those at a consistent level, because I think it was very up and down last year. And if you can stop that pressure from getting there, you can kind of not have him get hit so often. He was hit on more than 25% of his dropbacks last year. And I just don't think that's a sustainable way to play quarterback. So if they can get him out of those types of situations, I think there could be some interesting quarterback play in Tennessee.
I would agree with that assessment that it's not a sustainable way to play quarterback. Andre Dillard has basically left a graveyard of quarterback bones in his wake on his way to Green Bay. Dan Pizzuta has been kind enough to give us some of his time and his analysis. If you want more of the analysis, you can go to the33rdteam.com. You can follow him at Dan Pizzuta. That's Pizzuta on Twitter. Thank you, Dan. We really appreciate it. Thanks for joining the show for the first time.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you guys for having me.
That's Dan Pizzuta with the 33rd team, talking quarterbacks, wide receivers, and Brian Callahan's offense. Coming up next, the Preds make a critical hire, and Nashville SC with a huge win. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone. Dan was really good. We should have him back on the show at some point once we get into the actual season to talk about the progress, or maybe lack thereof, that Levis and the Callahan offense are making once they actually start to play games. Welcome back to the show, fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. Preds are bringing back goaltending guru, is the way that it's been headlined in several different places. Mitch Korn is coming to the Predators, returning to the Predators as the director of goaltending. The first ever goaltending coach, who was here with Barry Trotz during the team's first 16 seasons, is now coming back to the franchise and coming back to Trotz to work together. So this is a big deal for a couple of different reasons. They've worked together in some form or fashion for the better part of, almost 3 decades. In various stops. And Trotz left Nashville when? 14? 13? 14.
14. He went to Washington in 14.
And Korn went with him to the Capitals. And then both were together with the Islanders for a period of time as well. So he's coming back to the Preds. He's going to work directly with the goaltending coach, Ben Vanderklok, who's been here for a couple of years, who has been a big part of the development and progress that Pekka Rinne made during his time here. Of course, a historic career, and Pekka also on staff, so that's never a bad thing to have as well. But does this benefit Saros more, or does it benefit Askarov, because the Milwaukee Admirals are currently in the middle of the postseason for them, and I know that Askarov has struggled a little bit in the postseason, reading some work from John Glenn of the Nashville Post earlier today.
Yeah, I know a lot of Preds fans, when they saw this headline too, did not think that a Nashville Predators headline with the first name Mitch was going to be about a director of goaltending, but Mitch Marner, the winger of the Toronto Maple Leafs. But it is Mitch Korn. 5 players that have won Vezina trophies that have played for Mitch Korn. That is a crazy resume, but that's a good question on who it benefits more, because Askarov has to be here for it to benefit him. Right? Askarov has to be being coached by Mitch Korn and his staff, which includes Pekka Rinne as a scout, for it to benefit him. And I don't know how close he is to that. Goaltending has been a pretty hot topic in Nashville recently. And as you said, Grosnick is seemingly kind of the number one right now in Milwaukee. He's a little bit of the hot hand. They've split the playoffs pretty evenly, but Western Conference Finals started against the Coachella Valley Firebirds last night. 2-1 win for Coachella.
What a name.
And
Coachella Valley Firebirds.
And Grosnick got the start. So no Askarov yesterday, and Grosnick's been the better goaltender going into the Western Conference Finals. Grosnick 4-1, Askarov 2-3 with a goals against average of 3.25. Grosnick's goals against average an even 2, and he also has a better save percentage by about 4 percentage points. So Askarov has to be in Nashville for this to benefit him. So for the time being, it benefits UC Saros more to get Mitch Korn back under Barry Trotz.
A quick pivot to soccer, since the soccer team did get a big 2-0 win over Cincinnati last night. It's the first win, if I'm not mistaken, since Gary Smith got fired.
Yeah, third game under interim manager Rumba Muntali. First time they've collected 3 points, and they do it against the hottest team in MLS,
All
FC
right,
Cincinnati.
wait. Slow down for a second. Say the new coach's name again.
Rumba Muntali. Okay. You said it really fast. I just want people to know. Born in Zambia, grew up in Canada, played college soccer at UAB, just 3 hours south of here in Birmingham. And he is has been Nashville's player development coach, hired away from Kansas City, where he worked under current Nashville GM Mike Jacobs. So he's the interim. He's done a really nice job of just putting players in comfortable positions, of being forward-thinking, kind of allowing players to express themselves, not being very conservative in his approach, while kind of maintaining that defensive foundation, which has a lot to do with Walker Zimmerman being healthy. Yeah. And Nashville, in his 3 games, has drawn twice, won once, and conceded only 1 goal. So Rumba Muntali deserves a ton of credit. Like, to put it into context, FC Cincinnati was on a 7-game win streak. The MLS record is 9 for wins in a row. It was already one of the best runs in MLS history. In a sport where you can draw, winning 7 in a row and doing it on the road on multiple occasions is extremely difficult. And Nashville went up there, rivalry matchup going back to the USL days. They get 2 goals out of the first half hour from Jack Mayer on a corner and then Jacob Schaffelberg, both assisted by Hani Mukhtar, who was fantastic. Joe Willis also with the season-high 6 saves yesterday. And a huge win, just a huge win for this team's confidence. And suddenly they're right back above the playoff line. And as Nashville continues to look for a new manager, the results still matter because the whole point of making this move at this point in the season was to be able to bring somebody into the summer, utilize the summer transfer window, and make a push at the end of the season for the playoffs. So this is not like a lame duck. It is, I suppose, technically, but the results still matter as much today as they will in July and in August. So, yes, huge win for Nashville, and always sweeter when it's against a rival like FC Cincinnati. And a good performance. They return home Saturday hosting New England, who, unlike Cincinnati, is the worst team in the league right now. I mean, they are just dreadful. It has been nothing but bad for New England. And they go from playing the hottest team, an absolute contender in Cincinnati, and winning on the road Wednesday to hosting right now the team at the very, very bottom of the MLS standings as a whole.
Ben Wright had a good stat. You mentioned Walker Zimmerman and how much better they've been since he returned to action in the 7 games since April 27th, which was his first game back from that knee surgery. They have conceded the joint fewest goals in MLS, 4 since April 27th, which is when he came back. Nashville conceded the second most goals in MLS prior to his return in the 6 league games that he missed. They had given up 15 goals. They have allowed 4 since.
That sums it up. Walker's presence alone goes a long way, and then add on to it that he's one of the best American defenders alive, certainly one of the best in the league. And Nashville may be without him for a little longer because he is slated to join the U.S. Olympic team this coming summer, which could cause him to miss a couple of regular season games. You get 3 in men's soccer. You get 3 players over the age of 23 for the men's Olympic teams. It's often the U23 sides that go. Looks like Walker's going to be one of those 3.
We're going to continue our team series preview. Teams on the Tennessee Titans schedule. The team that they will open at home with, the New York Jets. We'll talk about them coming up next.
It is 10:55. That means that 5 minutes from right now, the doors will open at 5 of Hattie B's 6 locations, 5 of 6, because the factory at Franklin has had their doors open since 7 a.m. this morning because they are the only Hattie B's location currently in the mid-state serving breakfast. They're trying something new, and let me tell you, it is amazing. We've had listeners chime in on the F&M Bank chat, tweet at us, tell us that they are trying out the new Hattie B's breakfast, whether it's the hot chicken and waffle stack that somebody was telling us about yesterday, the classic hot chicken biscuit, the pimento cheese and hot chicken, and it is incredible. Whether it's for breakfast or for brunch, you got people in town. What better way for you to host people in Music City than to take them out for some Nashville hot chicken? And you know Hattie B's does it better than anyone, and they also have the best sides in town. Hattie B's is a family-run restaurant that serves up your favorite Southern food and authentic Nashville hot chicken. Download the Hattie B's app today. You'll get a free dessert with it, the banana pudding, the peach cobbler. You cannot go wrong. Order for pickup through the app. Skip the line, walk in, get your Hattie B's famous hot chicken, and head right back to the office on your lunch break, or order it for delivery. HattieB.com is where you can visit them. Download the Hattie B's app today.
So many people trust Two Rivers Ford. Football players, working moms, business owners, Why? Because Two Rivers Ford has been doing business with integrity for decades. Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer.
It is 11:01. Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica from the 104.5 The Zone studios. The Titans were on the practice field yesterday for OTAs, and wide receiver Calvin Ridley turned some heads at Ascension St. Thomas Sports Park. Head coach Brian Callahan talked about what Ridley has brought since signing as a free agent.
Everything that we thought he would be. You know, that's always exciting when you sign a guy in free agency and you hope, but you don't always know. You go by what you hear and what you see, and it's always good when the guy gets in the building and you see he's everything that you would expect him to be.
In NFL news, the Dolphins and wide receiver Jalen Waddle have reportedly agreed to a 3-year extension worth over $84 million with $76 million in guaranteed money. Waddle has gone over 1,000 yards in each of his first 3 seasons in Miami with 18 total touchdowns. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
What was the biggest story in football last year? The answer is easy.
Aaron Rodgers.
The answer is Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets took up all the oxygen for the offseason. The trade that saw the, at the time, disgruntled Green Bay Packers quarterback move to the New York Jets. There was messaging all around it. There was people flying from the New York Jets organization out to visit Aaron Rodgers. In California, there's darkness retreats, there's ayahuasca, there's an Achilles tear, there's an American flag, and then there's Jets fans' tears for months and months and months and months and months and months afterwards.
All in 1 year. That's actually incredible.
Just exhausting. Now Zach Wilson is a Bronco. Aaron Rodgers is back for the Jets, and they are on the Titans' schedule as the home opener for this team in week 2. We've told you every day, but Wednesdays we're going to continue to look at teams around the NFL to get caught up on what's happening and to make our assessments as to whether we're buying or selling their offseason plan and whether we believe them to be pretenders or contenders in this coming NFL season. Aaron Rodgers returns from the Achilles injury. There's videos and pictures and press conference clips and all manner of other things of Aaron Rodgers participating in OTAs. Looks like he's healthy. Looks like he's going to be ready to go week 1 because he will have missed almost a full calendar year by the time this ends up coming back. This is his 20th NFL season, Aaron Rodgers, and there is no question that everything that the Jets have done have been in service of Aaron Rodgers. He is the most powerful player, singular player in the NFL in the absence of Tom Brady. We can all agree, yes. Nobody has more control over their situation than does Aaron Rodgers. The only reason that Jets coaching staff, I think, still has a job is because Aaron Rodgers wants them to have jobs.
Yeah. Why was Nathaniel Hackett hired as the offensive coordinator of the New York Jets?
They wanted Aaron Rodgers. Now, their offseason has been pretty interesting because they have needs all over the place. If the Titans had the worst offensive line in football, the Jets had the second worst offensive line due to significant injury that they have struggled with throughout the course of the last couple of years. There's players who have missed a ton of time for the Jets, not just in one season, but in multiple seasons. And now they have tried to yet again reconfigure this roster around Aaron Rodgers. They have tried to add pieces to the skill positions as well. So they have Mike Williams, who they signed in free agency. He, of course, has been a regular, a frequenter of the injured reserve list. They bring in Tyron Smith from the Dallas Cowboys as an unrestricted free agent. He, of course, has missed a tremendous amount of time over the course of the last 4 years. They hedged their bets on both with Malachi Corley in the 3rd round and Olaf Ashanu in the 1st round to give themselves some depth in case something happens to this all-IR team. They bring in a couple of different free agents that they were comfortable paying, like John Simpson from the Baltimore Ravens, as Baltimore has to retool their offensive line again. Their draft class is a lot of offense. The defense has been buoyed by good players for a long time. C.J. Mosley has been a bit of an ageless wonder. Quinnen Williams, I don't know, you could probably go back and forth on who's the better player between he or Jeff at this point in their careers. They're pretty even to date as far as their resumes. They bring in Chuck Clark, the safety. Sauce Gardner is, if not the best corner in football, one of the best corners in football, and most of the roster spots on the defense that they had to fill in with the draft, they chose to do pretty sparingly with a couple of 5th and 7th round picks in the secondary at both corner and safety. They did get Jordan Travis as a backup. Well, they did get Tyrod Taylor as a backup, and then they drafted Jordan Travis in the 5th round.
Who snapped his leg in half late last season. So at what point do we actually see Jordan Travis on a practice field?
He said that he is envisioning himself as the successor to Aaron Rodgers. So don't tell Jordan Travis that he can't do it because he's hell-bent on doing it. So let's start with the Jets offseason. They are the coaching staff that should have been fired the most out of anybody in the league but kept their jobs, as far as I'm concerned. I've documented some of the roster changes that they made. Hold
on, why?
Why?
Yeah, why? Because Zach Wilson is terrible?
Because they did nothing to adjust for anything that made Zach Wilson terrible. Their offensive coordinator tore his Achilles on the same day that their quarterback did. And then Todd Downing and Nathaniel Hackett are just nothing? You got nothing? Nothing at all with somebody like Garrett Wilson on your roster?
What would you have liked to see more of from the Jets with Zach Wilson as their quarterback.
Less Zach Wilson and more running the football. Stop trying to put it in the quarterback's hands if the quarterback is too far gone.
For me, that entire season hinged on Aaron Rodgers, regardless of how things shook out.
Yes.
I do not know that there was any solution there the second Aaron Rodgers went down. So
I'm not saying that there's a solution to make them more viable, Lucas, but my point is, and we don't have to get bogged down in this, they were one of the worst offensive groups of coaches. By the way, Todd Downing, Keith Carter, both there, people that Titans fans wanted to run out of town, and you have since upgraded significantly over, one would think, in Brian Callahan and his father, Bill, in the years since. So there's reason to believe that there's plenty of flaws with this offensive coaching staff that, again, has one of the worst offensive lines in the sport. Injury is a part of it, but Keith Carter is also a factor that you have to take into consideration. And when you see a passing game look the way that the Jets do with Hackett and Downing, I think it's fair to assume that there is something wrong with that offensive coaching staff and that they should have been fired had they not had the most powerful quarterback or player in football presiding over the idea that they're going to keep their jobs.
Understanding that Aaron Rodgers comes back the following season is why they should not have been fired. Like to have to try and run it back, what they planned on doing going into 2023, they're going to try to do again in 2024. So it would have made no sense to fire the entire Jets coaching staff with Aaron Rodgers coming back in 2024.
Fire them all.
Is there more of a boom or bust team in the NFL this season?
Not a one.
There's just not. Like, this is a house of cards that if it gets built up all the way from the bottom to the top and literally everything goes right, then they could do something here.
Well,
the second something goes wrong, though.
Let's slow down. Let's play the game. Are you buying or selling their offseason? The New York Jets. Jackson, I'll start with you. You buying or selling the Jets offseason around Aaron Rodgers?
Selling.
Oh, yeah. Selling.
Hard selling.
This team won't make the playoffs in 24.
The AFC East is convoluted. The Bills have reigned over it, but they look as weak as they have in the Josh Allen era or since Josh Allen's initial phases. Dolphins are there. We don't really trust the Dolphins, it sounds like, as a show in the way that we've talked about them. The Patriots are not a factor yet, though. We'll see what happens with New England in 2024. There should be a path for the Jets to make some headway here because it's not like there's any one clear and obvious team that should be reigning over this division, right? But he's 40 years old, and they're rebuilding the offensive line, and they still play on MetLife Stadium turf. And he's coming off an Achilles tear. Now, their offense looks better with Tyron Smith and Mike Williams, if they're healthy.
Can you tell me the last time Tyron Smith, who is their solution at left tackle at 33 years old, the last time he played all 16/17 games in a regular season for the Dallas Cowboys?
I don't believe Tyron Smith has ever had the opportunity to play a full 17-game NFL season.
No.
So I would say that the last time that he did it was when there were 16 games. Yep. And I would venture a bet that it was in, I'll take a guess and say 2017.
2015. And you know what? To his credit, Tyron Smith was extremely available for the first 5 years of his career. He missed one game in the first 5 years of his career. Since then, he has never played a full season. He had the very injury-riddled 2022 and 2020 seasons. Last year, he started 13 games. So missed only 4, but still, it does not feel likely that Tyron Smith will be available for 15 or more games this season, and you are hinging your hopes on the left side of the line on that 33-year-old left tackle. Too much has to go right for the Jets to have a contending type of season. Just from a health perspective.
I'm buying their offseason, though. What else did we want them to do? What was the better solution than Tyron Smith for them at left tackle this year? Because they drafted Olaf Fashanu in the first round.
Well, that was my question to you about you saying the Jets coaching staff should be fired. What else would you have wanted them to do?
Well, hire a better offensive coaching staff and not let Aaron Rodgers have as much power and say over his entire situation. I don't think Aaron Rodgers should have unchecked power the way that he clearly does. That's neither here nor there.
No, it's here. It's here. Would you rather have Aaron Rodgers as your quarterback with unchecked power or be continuing to wander in the wilderness with Zach Wilson as your quarterback and no other answer? Give me Aaron Rodgers and put your chips in. Like, I get they had to make some concessions elsewhere, and the second Rodgers went down, it all goes to crap. But that's putting your chips in, is giving Aaron Rodgers this fresh breath of life that it seems he got when he got to New York.
No, Robert Saleh doesn't have a winning season in the NFL, Lucas. I don't think that just because Aaron Rodgers says so, that means that Robert Saleh should keep his job. So, but I am still buying their offseason because I get it. Like, Mike Williams is a viable wide receiver when he's healthy. You're right. They're hinging a lot on the health of the roster that they've put together. I make the joke about all IR team, but this is really so. And yet still, I look at the options that were available on the free agent market at left tackle. You know who else was talking about Tyron Smith for left tackle?
Oh, Titans. Sure.
We were.
Yeah.
Because he's the best left tackle available in a bad free agent left tackle market. So I'm buying their thought process, even if I think the whole concept is flawed from the jump. I get the moves that they made. Do I think they're contenders?
That's the thing. You can get the moves that they made, but that doesn't mean that they have to be contenders, that you have to buy the offseason as contenders.
Which is what, but that's not what I'm doing. Did I buy their offseason? And of course, the goal is to be a contender. But are they trying to do something here? They're trying to be a contender under Aaron Rodgers. Yes. If I'm buying their offseason, do I immediately have to buy them as contenders? Yes. Would I do that anyway because Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback? Yes, because he's one of the most gifted quarterbacks I've ever seen play the sport. And I still think it's a house of cards. It's probably the shakiest contender of anybody that we're going to do this exercise with. But I do think that I'm still buying their offseason, even if I don't trust it, even if I know that it's a disaster waiting to happen. Like, I get the moves. I get it. But it's flawed. The entire premise from the jump is flawed, and yet they're still contenders.
You know how people talk about championship DNA?
The Jets have the opposite.
Right? Exactly. Like the Chiefs, no matter the personnel, and yeah, I know it's because Pat Mahomes is there, but they have championship DNA. The Warriors for a while had that championship DNA. In every sport, you could pick a team. The Jets have the opposite of that.
They're just cursed. Cursed. Coming up next, Arden Key makes the case for new DC Denard Wilson, and he makes a pretty interesting comparison between what the old staff was doing and what this new staff won't let them do. I'll explain what I mean coming up next. So when do we ask Arden Key to come back on the radio show? Because he did it like 8 times last year.
Very soon.
Very soon? Is it time for high key, low key?
Well, Arden Key has a pretty big role on this Titans defense in 2024.
Well, he wants one, and they would like him to take one. But the question is he enough?
He needs to be for this pass rush to have a successful season in front of a very deep defensive backcourt, especially at corner.
Well, he's never been that in his career. But we'll have time to talk more specifically about that because Brian Callahan did speak specifically about Arden Key, and I know we don't have that handy today, but that's a different kind of discussion than the one I want to have around Arden right now. So the way that, just for your edification, the way that Titans availability works now is they tell us that we're going to have, hey, you'll have X amount of players on the field, and you can break out into, groups, and you can talk to them at the same time. So like yesterday, for example, they had McCreary, Ridley, Burks. Who else was out there? Arden, a handful of them. Spears. There were 5 or 6 players that were available to us for all of us to talk to, but they're all available at the same time. So you got to delegate, right? And then they had 2 players specifically at the podium. It was Chig, it was Cheeto. So when I'm going over to Arden, I'm talking to Arden probably like the 5th round of times that people has talked to Arden, which is why we love Arden Key, because he'll stand there and do it, and he'll have a good attitude, and he'll enjoy it, and he'll give you a quote every time. But he said something yesterday that was pretty interesting. And he said it a couple of different times in a couple of different ways. One with an expletive that we can't play for you here. But I was asking Arden, well, first, I joined a conversation where Arden was being asked about his role and about the idea of being a 3-down player for the first time in his career, as opposed to just a situational pass rusher, which he has been better equipped to be. So that's where this conversation starts. And then listen to him talk about, first, Denard Wilson, and then the differences between Wilson and the coaching staff that was here previously, including Shane Bowen and, of course, Mike Vrabel, whose defensive background lent itself to a lot of defensive coaching. This is Arden Key.
The intensity he got, the detail, and we don't move on until everything is fixed. And the detail he got and the swag that he got and that he come in with every day, oh man, it's gonna be exciting.
Did you move on before some details were fixed in the past?
Hell yeah. Yes, we moved on. If we messed up, we didn't fix it. And now this year, when we mess up, we don't move on until we fix it. So.
Well, is that from like the teams thing, not my conversation with him?
That is from the teams thing.
Okay, that's fine, because there was an additional question there that I wanted about Wilson, the follow-up about Wilson, how many different places that he's bounced around, and how that gives him particularly good insight into what could make Denard Wilson a viable defensive coordinator, Jackson. So if you could find the tail end of that, we can come back to that here in just a second. But let's just focus on what we heard from Arden Key first.
As we watch Mike Vrabel running around the Browns practice field at OTAs, simulating rushes against Deshaun Watson. It's jarring.
When's the last time you've seen a personnel consultant simulating rushes against a quarterback? Because that's the first time I've seen it.
What do you think is more jarring for Titans fans? Watching Vrabel running around in Browns gear on the practice field, or Henry in the Ravens jersey?
Henry. Yeah. The Henry one's tough. But, so Arden Key is saying, when we made mistakes, we did not bother to correct the mistakes under the previous coaching staff. Now, he didn't name Vrabel, didn't name Bowen, and didn't name Ryan Crow's not still there as the outside linebackers coach. I believe he's moved on as well. He didn't name anybody specifically. But when asked, did you move on instead of making corrections? Yes. Hell yes.
Yeah, not yes.
Hell yes.
Do we have that drop? Coach Mack? Oh, he's busy. He's busy.
He's busy. It's okay. It's not worth it. Back to the computer. So, that's a red flag, and one reason that you might see some of the miscues that were happening on the Titans defense. Now, that's one person giving one perspective. That's the first time that we've heard that Mike Vrabel or Shane Bowen or whomever he's alleging to in that particular clip wasn't detail-oriented in the coaching of the defense. And in fact, that would probably run counter to what you associate Mike Vrabel to being, which is hyper-focused on the details, right? But for sure, there was some evidence that things were fraying, whether it's the penalties and how players were not. It just didn't seem, they just seemed to be committing the same penalties over and over and over again. Dylan raids and the false starts are some of the most infuriating things that Titans fan will watch. And I don't know if that's correctable by Bill Callahan. That maybe not, maybe it's not, but just little things like that start to seep in and start to then bog you down in games, whether it's penalty, whether it's defensive corrections. All of a sudden, there's an explosive play going over the top of your head when you think you have Gardner Minshew and the Colts backed into a corner, and then you see Alec Pierce flying down the field over Sean Murphy-Bunting. Denard Wilson, or the emphasis for Denard Wilson being on, no, we don't move on until I see this done right. That's what you expect to be happening at every level of coaching, right? I think most people would assume that that's the case. Now, I mean, it's not like we implement that. Anytime we screw up, we just make it a bigger deal, and then we screw up even louder the next time around. So we're not the best example of a workplace that focuses in on not moving.
We are in a rare business where mistakes can sometimes turn into productivity in a very strange way.
I actively encourage the mistakes. I've told many people that we are at our best when we are at our worst. So I think that is a different kind of situation, not a parallel to the coaching of football.
How would you describe the Titans' defense last year? In one word.
Disjointed.
Okay. Disjointed is good. Because talking this morning on the phone, getting ready for the show, you said, oh, they were bad. Because they were bad.
They were bad.
I don't think they were bad.
They're bad at a lot of things that were glaring, and then they were great in the red zone.
So here are some numbers on the Titans' 2023 defense. And we don't have to get into the weeds on specifics, but the Titans were middle of the pack in yards per play allowed in the NFL. Titans were top 10 in passing touchdowns allowed. They were top 10 in rushing touchdowns allowed. Middle of the pack in getting to the quarterback in sacks, pressures. Middle of the pack in scoring defense, points per game. Middle of the pack in third down defense, and the number one red zone defense in the NFL. Just by the numbers, that's not a bad defense. That's a average to above average defense. But the margins, I think, that Arden Key is talking about showed up in situations that let the Titans down last year. Situationally, their worst moments seem to come at the worst times.
I want to know by percentage how many snaps they played in the red zone more
absolutely,
than your average NFL team.
But you mentioned that Colts game, right? Like we think of that Colts game as a glaring indictment on this defense with the situational stuff at the end of the game with Christian Fulton and Alec Pierce.
Murphy Bunting. That wasn't a Fulton.
Well, okay.
Fulton had plenty.
But Fulton had a rough game that day. Like Christian Fulton comes to mind as, what was his quote after the game? I don't think I played poorly, talking about the officiating, all that type of stuff.
Yeah, that was a tough one for him.
Final score of that game was 23-16, right? And you know,
that touchdown came when?
Which one?
That Alex Pierce, it was 50-plus yards, or it might have been even 70-plus yards. At the very end of the game, it was Titans versus Colts at home.
Oh, that Alec Pierce touchdown. Oh, I'm talking about the Colts game in Indy. Forgive me.
No, this is what I'm talking about, because they had them here. They had them beat here.
That's right. I'm talking about the game in Indy, the Zach Moss game, which was a 23-16 final, which at surface level is like, okay, well, if you can only score 16 points, then how are you going to sit there and talk about it? Because we were just talking about the defense after that game, the running defense. And so that Alec Pierce game, that was 31-28 in overtime. And that Alec Pierce touchdown happened late. That was also the special teams game with the blocked punch, so that had a big role to play as well.
Sure
but
did.
Alec Pierce had a 36-yard touchdown from Gardner Minshew in the first quarter. Michael Pittman had the game-winning touchdown in overtime on a 4-yard pass from Gardner Minshew.
Okay.
But the point is, situationally is where the Titans were let down. Feels like that's what comes down to the details that Arden Key is talking about. They weren't a bottom 5, bottom 10 defense. Right? Like the bones of a good defense were there. And to be quite honest, it kept them in a lot of games last year that the offense could do nothing with.
Well, that's the thing. The defense, you feel worse about the defense, because I'm sure a lot of people, if you'd asked them the same way that you asked me this morning, was Titans defense good last year? They would say, no, terrible defense. Christian Fulton, terrible. Injuries, terrible. You know, this, that, and the other.
Offense was worse than the defense last year.
Which is why the defense is even further scrutinized, because when you cannot score, and I've said this a million times over, when you cannot score, every little thing that happens on the field of play is magnified. Your special teams, your lack of return ability, your defense your secondary, your lack of takeaways, whatever, because you're leaning on everything else but the offense, because the offense can't do anything but fart out 17 points per game.
By the way, that Pierce bomb you're thinking of set up that game-winning Pittman touchdown. That's what it was. In overtime, deep ball to Alec
So he
Pierce.
didn't score the touchdown, but they let them get to the red zone on that play.
Exactly. They got them inside the 5-yard line.
Still.
Kevin on the F&M Bank chat points it out.
Thank you, Kevin. In particular, this Titans defense, I'm trying to figure out what exactly the expectation of an NFL defense needs to be in today's league, right? The expectation should no longer be, well, the defense has to hold them under 3 touchdowns. If you're holding a team to 20 or 21 points per game, you're probably one of the best defenses in the sport that year because the offenses are crazy. The rules are set up to further allow the offense to score, to further benefit the quarterbacks, to further benefit the wide receivers, to further benefit the entertainment value. The defense is constantly fighting against everything all at once, all the time. So I don't know what constitutes a good NFL defense in today's league where the scoring is up.
Titans allowed 21.6 points per game last season.
Right, which would be an excellent defense.
In top half, it was 15th in the league.
Who Ravens best?
16.2. Kansas City, 17.
Well, Kansas City, that's the thing that is not slept on because I think everybody's well aware of how much carrying that defense did for them.
During the regular season,
but
certainly.
Again, think about it. When the Chiefs couldn't score, what is hyper-scrutinized? The defense, and they came through with flying colors. It's not really sustainable. I think of Mariota in 19 when they couldn't get anything done, and the defense was excellent under Dean Pease. That was still MMCMB. That was, the early phases of Jeff Simmons and Jarrell Casey. They were a really, really high-level group. When you get to the level, somebody said we're giving them Fulton PTSD in the comments. Don't worry. You see him late in the year with the LA Chargers. He is now in Los Angeles, as a matter of fact. So that will be interesting to see who gets the better of whom in that particular matchup. But I digress. Denard Wilson, the reason that Arden Key is making the case for Denard Wilson, I think, is as interesting as Arden's comments on last year's coaching staff. Because, we don't have to relitigate what happened last year. It's done. You're trying to figure out how can it be better or how can it be less situationally problematic. Because the Titans' defense was situationally problematic outside of the red zone.
And those are the details he's talking about.
Yes. So, Arden Key, 3 years with the Raiders as a third-round draft pick in 2018. Then he gets cut in April of that year. He goes to the Niners in 2021, plays good football, goes to Jacksonville in 2022, wins the division. In fact, famously, he's the one that strip sacks Josh Dobbs, or I guess... Yeah, strip sacks Josh Dobbs, and what could have been an incomplete pass was calls a forced fumble or fumble recovery for a touchdown. Titans lose, Jags win. That's how the division is decided in Week 18 in Jacksonville. Then he comes to Tennessee on a 3-year, $21 million deal. He's a situational pass rusher, and they're asking a little more out of him here. But he plays okay. It's inconsistent. I would like more. I would like better more often from Arden Key. I think I've been pretty clear about that, even for as often as we've had him on. So when Arden talks about bouncing around the league and how that gives him unique perspective to evaluate coaches, I listen because he has seen a bunch of different situations, a bunch of different schemes, and a bunch of different coaches, which is what he articulated yesterday after practice.
Very reassuring. I'm tip my hat out to him the last 2 years. I mean, he's been consistent in his work the last 2 years. Just the defense he's been part of, they did crazy, tremendous work. I remember Philly when they almost broke the sack record. Everybody was just talking. And then when we hired him, you kind of look back and remember, oh, man, he was part of that. Oh, man, he's in Philly. Oh, man, he's with the Jets. Oh, these guys that get to the quarterback, know how to get to the quarterback, and just their style of getting to the quarterback is what fix us best.
So Arden has pretty good perspective on that. And he said earlier that, mentioning the Ravens, the number one defense last year, breaking all kinds of records because they were number one in takeaways, number one in sacks, number one in points per game. They were top 5 in basically every other category. They were excellent last year. And Arden had said previously, and I had to go, it took me a long time this morning to look it up, because Arden had said, well, I've been a part of number one defenses before that have been number one in sacks and number one in takeaways. And then I went back and found, well, no, he really hasn't. In fact, San Fran, they had a good year in 2021, but his 3 years with the Raiders, they were pretty hideous. So I think he's probably referencing San Fran there. Jacksonville was okay in 2022, but they weren't great. I went back. The Raiders finished 24th, 31st, and 30th in team takeaways while Arden Key was on the roster. They were 32nd, 25th, and 29th in sacks while they were transitioning from Oakland to Vegas. His final year with the Raiders was Vegas.
So the whole thing about Denard Wilson is building the defense back to front, right? And that's shown in their investment in the cornerback position.
Yeah.
Right? And what they could still do potentially at safety with some room to work with and some free agents on the market still available after OTAs.
I will say, though, they don't seem to be, I mean, it doesn't mean that they won't, turn around and sign Justin Simmons tomorrow, but just based on talking to people, they don't seem to be in all that big a hurry to go out and get the veteran safety. Now, also, the veteran safeties aren't in that big a hurry to be participating in OTAs, so something to keep in mind.
Let me ask you this. Let's go back in time 1 year, and around May, June of 2023, looking ahead to the Ravens season, looking at their pass rushing core, what would you have said the conversation was around that core? And just for reference, the Ravens sack leaders last year, their 3 sack leaders were Justin Matabuki,
who got paid,
Jadeveon Clowney, and Kyle Van Noy. So going into last season, what would you have thought about Justin Matabuki, Jadeveon Clowney, and Kyle Van Noy as your primary pass rush options before last season?
I would have, Matabuki has been a solid player, but this is different. He had a career year.
He had a breakout year.
Van Noy had done it for the Dolphins. So my biggest question was with Clowney, because the Clowney experience in Cleveland, that should have been what it was in Baltimore, and it never really materialized that way. He had some moments with Myles Garrett where it looked like it was supposed to look. But I thought it felt to me that they were doing what the Ravens always do. They're just patching it together. You go ahead and pay our Zadarius Smiths of the world. You pay our players who are due big contracts. We'll replenish. We'll find ways to get veterans in here and piece this thing together. But they did more than piece it together. They got as good a defense in the regular season as has ever been coordinated.
Kyle Van Noy had a career year.
Yeah.
At 32 years old. He turned 33 in March. Jadeveon Clowney had one of the best seasons of his career. And Justin Matabuki had a breakout career year. So none of those guys were looked at as Kyle Van Noy was starting to get up there. Jadeveon Clowney was starting to get up there. Matabuki had never done anything beyond 5.5 sacks in 2022. So it's not like we were going into 2024 thinking, Ravens are going to lead the league in sacks. Look at that pass rushing core. Look at it. Look at the investment they've made in it. That wasn't the conversation. An elite defensive backfield, and those 3 players having arguably the best seasons of each of their careers led to the Ravens having an elite pass rush, the best in the NFL, and in turn, the best defense in the NFL. So I guess the hope is for that to translate in some way with the Titans, with the defensive backfield, Harold Landry as the catalyst, and for Arden Key, and then depth pieces having to step up along the way, whether it's Rashad Weaver, whether it's Caleb Murphy, who we haven't really talked about since the preseason of last year. But it's not like the Ravens had this elite pass rushing core with a bunch of investment towards it going into last year. They had the best sack number in the NFL in 2023.
615-737-1045 is the number. We'll take your phone calls on the Titans and do some NFL headlines coming up next. All right, let's get to some phone calls. I feel like I haven't taken phone calls today. 615-737-1045 is the number. We'd be happy to have you. We were talking about some differences in the Titans defense, what we're seeing, what we're hearing, who we're talking to. And in particular, Arden Key was somebody that we had let you hear from after yesterday's practices, some differences between what Mike Vrabel and Shane Bowen were doing versus Denard Wilson, and how Arden in particular is taking some very big takeaways from his coaching style, from what he's seeing, and from who he's worked under in years past. Kyle is in construction up next. Hey, Kyle.
Hey, Booker. Well, I'm the guy who said you give me PTSD about Christian Fulton. If you remember last year, whenever he got his beat against the Colts, I had a serious problem with that. I was like begging you to make sure he's not getting his eyes in the backfield. But anyhow, what is with Arden Key? I was really excited when we first got him. I just saw him as a great pass rusher. Does he just disobey and go for the sacks? Is he not doing his assignment, or is he just a little light in the ass and doesn't have enough strength to hold up?
Well, there's some of that. So he's not a great pass rusher. I mean, he's not like a league great pass rusher, Arden Key. He's a third-round pick in 2018. He bounced around. He got cut before his rookie contract was done. And, I don't know all the specifics of why it didn't end well with the Raiders or didn't end the way that he thought it might with the Raiders. But he's been a situational guy since he came into the league. So I think your expectations might have been a little elevated for Arden. Now, the idea of being light in the ass, yeah, he's not great against the run. Arden Key is somebody, and this is something that Brian Callahan talked about yesterday. In fact, you probably don't have that, Jackson. I didn't ask you to get that this morning because we'll spend some more time on that later, I guess. But yeah, Arden Key has never been a 3-down player. This contract, this opportunity with the Titans is really the first time that Arden Key has had the opportunity to take hold of a job full time. So I don't know if he's going to be significantly better in 2024 than he was last year, but I don't know. I got the Arden Key experience that I kind of expected coming in 2023. Headlines?
It's time for headlines with Lucas Panzica. Bum, 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 ba-dum, ba-dum, ba-dum.
Dolphins wide receiver Jalen Waddle has signed a 3-year extension with over $84 million total money, $76 million in guaranteed money, and that evens out with the total money to $28.25 in average annual value, which makes him a top 5 highest paid wide receiver in the National Football League. So another big wide receiver contract comes down. Over 3,000 yards, over 3,300 yards over the course of the last 3 seasons for Jalen Waddle in Miami. 18 total touchdowns last season in 14 games. He had 1,014 yards and 4 touchdowns in 2023. So that's the next domino in the wide receiver market. The question is, who will come next?
We're just going to ignore. Did that go out over the air? That awful noise that was made in my ear?
Oh, yeah.
49ers wide receiver Jawan Jennings got his deal as well. A 2-year contract worth $15.4 million, $10.5 million in guaranteed money. Jennings over the last 3 seasons, they came out at the same time. Waddle a first-round pick, Jennings a 7th-round pick. Jennings, 78 career catches, 963 yards, 7 touchdowns in the regular season. Where he made his impact last year was in the playoffs with 10 catches for 111 yards, a touchdown, and a passing touchdown. Both of those touchdowns, of course, came in the Super Bowl. And it is crazy to think just how close Jawan Jennings' football career was to ending when Brady Hoke kicked him off of the team, when Jawan Jennings went on a social media tirade on Instagram Live about how much he hates Vanderbilt in 2017. And then when Jeremy Pruitt's hired, he brings back Jawan Jennings, and the rest is history. He will be making minimum $5 million a year. So congratulations to Murfreesboro native Jawan Jennings of Blackman High School.
You sad?
Am I sad about what?
That the Niners kept him. I know a lot of Titans. He's a restricted.
Right, yeah. I knew that was going to be the outcome.
Yeah, but he's not. I mean, well, the thing that's interesting here, so they took Pearsall in the first round, and they're keeping Jawan Jennings. Kittle's still there. Debo's still there. Is Debo Samuel about to be a running back? Because that's, I mean, not primarily. None of them are primarily anything, it seems. Juszczyk is a receiver / fullback / whatever the hell. Kittle is in the backfield, out wide, playing wide receiver, inline tight end. Ayuk is probably the most conventional player at his position. And his future there is a bit in question as they kind of work through the wide receiver dominoes you talked about with Waddle earlier in the contract that he just got. But I'm less interested in Jawan Jennings' contract as much as I'm interested in Jawan Jennings staying there and what it means for Debo. Because Debo famously he's trying to get away from basically reinventing or inventing his own position.
Yeah, it's almost happened to his detriment.
No, it is to his detriment.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, of course it is. They have tried to make him a hybrid player, and he's really, really great at it, which is unfortunate for him because it's going to shorten his career lifespan if he continues to play in that role, even though he's made out of the same stuff I'm convinced that bowling balls are made out of. The dude is just solid.
Two more. Ugly story in Kansas City as defensive lineman Isaiah Buggs has 2 misdemeanor warrants filed against him on charges of cruelty to dogs in the second degree. Don't want to go into detail on that story. And the LA Chargers have signed former first-round pick Alex Leatherwood.
Saw that.
The former Alabama offensive lineman who I had completely forgotten about. He was on the Browns practice squad for a time last year, and he finds himself back on an NFL roster in Los Angeles.
Quickly, did you see that Buggs said it's some kind of ongoing dispute with the city of Tuscaloosa because they're trying to close down his hookah lounge or something like that? Like he's got a club that he's been going back and forth apparently with the city of Tuscaloosa on, so he's alleging that, and he's of course put out a statement that the charge is erroneous. He doesn't know anything about the animal. He didn't know the animal was at the property, this, that, or the other. But yeah, KC in the headlines for all the wrong reasons this offseason.
And what's he doing in Tuscaloosa? Like he didn't go to Alabama. He's from Louisiana. I'm confused. Oh, he did go to Alabama.
No, he did go to Alabama.
Wow,
What he a Lions draft pick out of Alabama?
He was a Steelers draft pick in the 6th round in 2019. I completely forgot he went to Alabama because he transferred from JUCO, from a community college, to Alabama. Wow, I forgot about Isaiah Buggs. He was just another guy in their long list of NFL defensive lineman depth they had under Saban.
Traylon Burks is the most talked about player on the Titans for reasons that are beyond me. We'll talk about it coming up next.
It is 12 o'clock. Good afternoon. I'm Lucas Panzica from the 104.5 The Zone studios. Titans were on the practice field yesterday for OTAs. Wide receiver Calvin Ridley turning heads at Ascension St. Thomas Sports Park. Not in attendance yesterday were Jeffrey Simmons, DeAndre Hopkins, Harold Landry, L'Jarius Sneed, Nicholas Petit-Frere, and Tavondre Sweat, among a couple of others. In NFL news, the Dolphins and wide receiver Jalen Waddle reportedly have agreed to a 3-year extension worth over $84 million, $76 million of it in guaranteed money. Waddle has gone over 1,000 yards in each of his first 3 seasons in Miami with 18 total touchdowns. Tonight in the NHL, it is Game 5 of the Eastern Conference Finals. Rangers hosting the Panthers. Series is tied up 2-2. Puck drop is at 7 p.m. In the NBA, the Timberwolves host the Mavericks for Game 5 of the Western Conference Finals. Dallas leads at 3-1, looking to stamp their ticket to the NBA Finals against the Celtics with a win tonight. Tip-off is at 7:30. For all your foundation repairs and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Final hour is upon us. Why are we still talking about Traylon Burks in the midst of an offseason that's very, very exciting? Players keep getting asked about Traylon Burks. Coaches keep getting asked for commentary on Traylon Burks. And there he was in front of me yesterday, Lucas. I saw him with my own eyes. Traylon Burks in the flesh, answering questions about all of this different stuff heading into a make-or-break season by anyone's estimation for the former number 1 draft choice of the Tennessee Titans back in 2021. It is a pretty interesting thing because he's not that, and I don't mean this in a bad way, he's not that interesting of a guy, right? Like, to talk to him, he's about ball. He's very much what I associate with a John Robinson type of personality or player personality that John and Vrabel brought in, which is no nonsense, not super extroverted, not super off the walls, just going to go about it, going to do his work, loves Jesus, loves football, loves his family.
Loves boar hunting.
Loves boar hunting.
And Arkansas.
That's right.
I mean, I see what you're saying from a media interview perspective, but how many NFL players are avid wild boar hunters?
It's a good, more than you probably think.
I don't know how much he's doing in the offseason.
Well, it's just, it's unfortunate because the most interesting thing about him has been the boar hunting in 3 years as a professional athlete, but that's neither here nor there. So he is doing well at practices, just as he was doing well at practices last year, until such time as he had the first knee sprain in Minnesota, working in the joint camp practices. He came down on it wrong after making a contested catch, struggled with it throughout the course of the year, tried to play through it. They shut him down at a couple of different times to try and get him over it, had a different kind of a knee sprain, and then, of course, had an IR stint with a concussion. So Traylon Burks' experience, we've documented. It's not been easy for him. So I talked to him yesterday about a couple of different things. And I know 3HL spoke with him as well, but I want to hear from Traylon Burks on the practice field, Jackson, if you could pull it up on my timeline. With everything that he's going through at this point and the level of the approach that he's taking to the season and not to the rehabilitation process, but to the training process to try and prevent as much of these injuries as he can, which is interesting because Tehran was making the rounds and it was clearly an assignment for ESPN that he was working on specific to Guardian caps that we will talk about here in just a second because that's obviously a big thing for Traylon Burks as well. So this is Traylon Burks yesterday with us on the practice field.
Healthy, having fun, and just loving ball. So I feel real good.
What's it like? I guess with so many new faces around you. What's it like being around Calvin and Tyler?
It's fun, man. Learning from Nats, learning from three, really good guys, and they're all helping me critique, things that I need to get better at, and they also ask for my feedback on things that they need to get better at. So it's just like a all well round, everybody's helping each other. So it's real good.
Did you do anything different heading into this year as far as size, strength, and what's kind of your mindset going into year 3?
Just making sure that I can stay healthy, doing whatever I need to take care of my body, and main thing is to have fun. So coming back into it to have fun, and that's what I've been doing. So
with your situation having been concussions and knee sprains and stuff like that, Traylon, how do you kind of protect against that? Because it doesn't necessarily seem like there would be an easy way to do that.
Just working out, making sure that I'm doing the right workouts to protect, to strengthen muscles in my legs to help not have those knee injuries. And you really can't stop concussions. But other than that, just taking care of my body a lot better.
So that's Traylon Burks talking about, his approach to training, and there's nothing you can do about concussions except, Lucas, now there is. You can't outright prevent them, but you can wear the guardian caps in games.
Did you hear what Chig had to say about that?
Sure, I was there for that. Not a single, and I'm paraphrasing slightly, not a single NFL player, says Chig Okonkwo, is going to wear the guardian cap in a game because of how swagless it makes you look. Now,
he's like, yeah, nobody's doing that. He laughed it off. Like,
nobody's right. And by the way, Traylon was also asked that question because Traylon Burks has dealt with concussions. And the thing about concussions is once you have them, they recur far more often than somebody who has not had a first concussion. Traylon Burks did not answer it as declaratively as Chig did, whereas just to say, yeah, nobody's going to wear it because it looks ugly, basically. But he said, I'm not really worried about that right now. Tehran, I think, kind of tried to take him down the path of, because it looks bad, and he just said, well, I'm not really worried about that right now. Nobody wants to wear the guardian caps in game. You know what I'm curious about? And I don't know the answer to this question. The technology that keeps the guardian cap or helps decrease the risk of concussion with the guardian caps, okay? Is there a reason that it can't be put on the inside of a helmet as opposed to the outside? I don't know. Maybe that's a stupid question, but I'm just looking at the padded exterior of it and thinking, why isn't that on the inside of the helmet?
That feels like it would look like, those. It's a trend now. The big hats people wear.
Yeah.
The hats that's like.
Who's the running back from Washington? Didn't he start that?
The running back from Washington.
Well, he's in Washington.
Brian Robinson. Yeah, it's like, the hat, do you get it? It's too big. Do you get why it's funny? Because the hat's too big? Like, that's what I feel like everybody that posts one of those is what they're getting at. That's what I think that would look like if you put the guardian cap padding. Because it's robust.
No, it looks ridiculous. They look
helmet, like the face mask would be bigger.
What's the name of the character from Mario Brothers? The mushroom thing. Toad. They all look like toads out there running around with the giant mushroom on their head. But if it decreases the percentage chance or the risk of concussion by over 20%, that is not insignificant. And you can't force them to wear it, nor do I think fans necessarily want them to wear it because they don't want their football team to be the ugly-looking dopes out there in the guardian caps or whatever. But if you're Traylon Burks, don't you almost have to? If you are going to tell us, and I don't want to back him into a corner on this, but I don't know how you can say both of those things at once. What Traylon just said, that he's doing everything that he can to make sure that he's available, but that wearing the guardian cap in game is something that he's not worried about. It seems he shouldn't have to be the only one that wears the guardian cap, right? Like that, it's like a dunce cap for a football player is what it kind of looks like.
If the pads were on the inside, Harold on the F&M Bank chat says everyone is going to look like Dark Helmet from Spaceballs. Have you seen Spaceballs?
Yeah.
Rick Moranis' character.
Yeah, I know.
The giant Darth Vader helmet. That is what it would look like.
But that's, still, you can't tell me that you're doing everything with him. Am I being too literal? I guess is what I'm asking the room. If you tell me that you're going to do everything in your power to stay out there and be available, and your entire career to date has been defined by the idea that you aren't out there and you can't be available, and concussions is as big a part of it as anything.
And it's been the least preventable of the injuries, right? It's not soft tissue. You can't strengthen your head muscles to prevent concussions.
Somebody makes a great point on YouTube, Nash_BG. It's the difference of, do I wear a helmet or not when on a motorcycle? You absolutely should wear a helmet when you're on a motorcycle. My barber just got in a horrible motorcycle accident. I'm anti-motorcycle for a variety of different reasons. It's just one, it seems very, very risky for not a lot of payoff and also cicadas in your face.
I would screw it up so bad. I cannot have it. Now, I would get a Vespa. I'd scoot around in a Vespa. But like a Ducati
you
or like
would
Harley.
look like such a bleep hole with your bag of groceries on the front of your Vespa. Anyway,
start pulling up to the station every day in a Vespa.
So let me stay focused here for a second. Am I wrong to hear Traylon Burks say that about the availability and about then the Guardian cap and think, well, no, bud, you kind of have to wear the Guardian cap if you are going to sit here and tell me that you are doing everything within your power to be available as a player when the science is showing us that there is a over 20% drop in concussion rate when the Guardian caps are present.
Did he say he's not going to wear the Guardian cap?
He didn't say it specifically. What he said is he's trying not to say that he doesn't want to wear the Guardian cap, which is fine because he don't want the headline, right? For the same reason that I'm talking about, but that's all I could hear in my head is, oh, he don't want to put the Guardian cap on. Because he's already wearing the Q collar type of thing, you know, that little white necklace type of situation that he had on his neck last year. I think some people pointed it out that it's supposed to help. And forgive me, I don't remember the exact science, but it's something to do with the circulation of the blood flow and how it gets to the brain.
Yes, the Q collar. Like it's supposed to, because athletes of all sports wear that. Nashville SC played at San Jose recently that a striker wears it, where it's supposed to increase blood flow to the point where, so to prevent your brain rattling around as much. It's a very specific science. Some players swear by it. Luke Kuechly wore it.
So it's not concussion proof, the Guardian cap. But I had a hard time with yesterday him saying that he's going to do everything within his power to be available and healthy this year, and then trying to sidestep as much as humanly possible the Guardian cap stuff. Because he is the biggest test study for a player that should be wearing the Guardian cap, not just in practice, but in games. So we'll see. Will Levis's education is something that we're going to get to here in just a little bit, but you're also going to hear about the amount of pressure, two sides of this thing. Calvin Ridley on Traylon Burks, because Calvin Ridley said some wild stuff yesterday about Traylon Burks that we have to get to. And I know you had Kevin Dyson on when I went to practice, and that he also had some thoughts on the amount of pressure that the former number one pick is under. So we'll get to that and the education of Will Levis coming up next. QC Kinetics is here to help you with that nagging joint pain, because if you're not able to enjoy this summer as much as you want to because of joint pain, QC Kinetics is the best thing for you because it's the best time for being outdoors. Don't suffer any longer. Call the medical experts at QC Kinetics and understand why they're the nation's leader in regenerative medicine. I'm talking lasting joint pain relief with no surgery, no drugs, and no downtime. QC Kinetics advanced treatments harness your own body's ability to restore and repair damaged joint tissue so you can walk, run, hike, play golf, and move again pain-free. QC is under the leadership of former orthopedic surgeon Dr. Mitchell Shinecup, a true pioneer in regenerative medicine. Their advanced protocols have enabled tens of thousands of patients to reclaim their mobility, so stop putting it off. Take action now and live your best life again with QC Kinetics. The number 615-249-4024. That's 615-249-4024. Welcome back to the show. We are fueled by Hattie B's Hot Chicken. It's lunchtime. I know Lucas and I and Jackson, we're all thinking about hot chicken. You should be. Go check out any one of their locations. We are going to be at the Charlotte Ave location on Tuesday of next week. So hang out with us at Hattie B's and get some great food while you're there. Also download the app, mobile deliver your Hattie B's directly to you, your home, your office, your event, whatever the case may be. Hattie B's has you covered. Will Levis. Big topic of conversation, one would say, this offseason. I am trying to learn as much about quarterback mechanics right now as at any other point in my life. Marcus, it was kind of an emphasis with when Pat O'Hara got here versus who Mike Mularkey had on staff at the time and what O'Hara was doing and how different Pat's resume was from who they had previously had in that role in the past couple of years. Now they go to Bo Hardegree and Nick Holtz and Brian Callahan, whose resume is excellent with quarterbacks. But, Lucas, what did you point out about the quarterback specific to Brian Callahan's resume yesterday?
Was it the fact that Burrow's the only quarterback he worked with at the start of his career?
Correct. All of the other players were much further along in their respective careers by the time that Brian Callahan was working with them.
And he was learning more from Peyton Manning than Peyton was from him.
I'm sure he is probably learning stuff from Will Levis. I'm sure he learned things from Joe Burrow. So it's not like that can't still happen, but it's a much different situation. And at some point, he's going to he's getting older in his career. So yeah, at some point he's going to transition into being the person giving out the sage advice as opposed to the person who is being given the guidance of somebody like Peyton Manning as they try and work together. But there's a couple of different things with the mechanics of this, now that they've got all kinds of new parts and pieces and toys in particular. I'm talking about the equipment that they're using, not just the new players that they have out on the field. I'm trying to pick up as many differences as I can between, for example, Pat O'Hara's quarterback drills with Levis and Willis and what Callahan and Hardegree are doing with the quarterbacks right now. And there's a couple of different things that we talked to Callahan about regarding Levis yesterday, specific to the base of the quarterback, the footwork that is required and the base that you need to operate out of. This was Brian Callahan speaking about Levis within that context.
That's one of the big things we've emphasized with Will over this period here is the base, how important that is to playing quarterback, being able to play on time, being able to get the ball out quickly. He's always had a really natural, quick release. That's always been one of his strengths. And, but that's the base, and playing with a base and playing on time within the framework of your mechanics are things that we spend a lot of time talking about. And I think he's done a really nice job of translating those things on the field. And again, he's always had a quick release, so that part's easy. You don't have to do much coaching there. That's a natural thing that he does.
Holding the elbow up higher, it seems like at the time last year, it seemed like he maybe was the rush, or maybe what they would have a tendency to drop it.
We don't spend a ton of time with upper body mechanics as much, but there is some awareness of the general principle of you want your elbow above your shoulder for the most part. Whenever you start to drop it, you do lose control of the ball. The accuracy starts to dip a little bit. But he's been conscious of that, and I think
benefit him. Like, why do this change for him?
It's more a consistency in the footwork, so you can play on time within the parameters of the progressions of the passing game. Guys that all the really, really great quarterbacks all play with a great base, and they're able to take a really short first step, and the ball comes out. So you tie those mechanical things in with an already a really natural quick release that Will has. I think it's only going to help him. But a lot of it's more the discipline and the footwork leading into the base of the top of the drop, where he can really, I think, generate even more power than he's already got, and it helps him play more on time within the system framework. So that part's he's incredibly coachable. So that part's been fun to watch.
So that's Brian Callahan talking about Will Levis and his base and how that's improving the quarterback situation. Well, the situation for the quarterback is going to improve things for the wide receivers. The offensive system is going to improve things for the parts and pieces as a whole. So it's not just about Levis working through his base. It's about what they're able to help Levis create for the receivers within the scheme, which again brings us full circle back to Traylon Burks. Because Traylon Burks working out of these sets, and we can't get specific with you with the practice reporting rules about like how Traylon Burks is being deployed when we're out there on the practice field, right? I can tell you that Mason Rudolph was 3 for 3 yesterday in the 7-on-7 session. But I can't tell you, what kind of routes that he was, or what kind of routes the receivers were running that he was completing the passes to. There's specifics that have to be left out for competitive advantage reasons. So you understand that. So Traylon's deployment, though, is the thing that we've all been most interested in since Tyler Boyd came in because, okay, if he's not outright losing snaps, how do they see him? Callahan has talked about this before. They have taken it upon themselves as a challenge to the coaching staff to try and find the best possible role for Traylon Burks within the scheme that they've devised. But it sounds like the results for Traylon thus far in 7-on-7s, they're not 11-on-11s. It's not a real defense that he's playing against. Everybody relax, except for Calvin Ridley, who just wants to gas you up about Traylon Burks.
This dude is a freak. I gotta see how seriously, bro. He's gonna be a stud. There's no worries with him. What I see, he's like Julio, AJ Brown. He's like T.O. Dude, that big, that fast, man. He's a stud, man. You don't gotta worry about him. You just gotta learn, slow the game down. He's gonna be all right.
Okay.
What a collection of names.
Julio? Wait, is it back there? Is it still back there? Is it still roaming around back there? Do we have the
That's A.J. Brown saying Julio.
You remember when A.J. compared Racey McMath to Julio?
Yeah.
So, you'll forgive me, Calvin, if I'm a little wary of the Julio Jones comparisons where it regards Titans wide receivers.
And T.O.
Well, yeah. Julio, A.J. Brown, T.O. is who Calvin Ridley said. In theory, he should be something like that. He was supposed to be AJ coming out of college, or in the mold of AJ. Not supposed to be AJ, but in the mold of AJ, right? And he is in the mold of AJ. He's big, he's physical, he's fast as all hell. I think he's bigger and faster than AJ Brown is. It's just putting it all together beyond just the gifts, the traits, how he makes that into the best version of a football player has been the struggle. But there's no lack of hype around Traylon Burks. Do you think it helps or hurts when his teammates publicly gas him up like that? Because it's probably both to an extent. He probably loves the fact that he just feels supported. He is in a supporting environment that, at every turn, at every possible opportunity for there to be even something that could be construed as criticism about Traylon Burks, to a man, Hopkins, Callahan, Ridley, everybody, they have all been, no, this is exciting. We can't wait to figure out how to use this guy. But they keep saying they can't wait to figure out how to use him instead of we can't wait to see this guy get out on the field.
I don't know how it could hurt.
Well, here's how. Lucas, they just compared him to AJ, Julio, and T.O. And if he has a great training camp and then in the season, he's not even whatever. He's not even. I'd like for him to be Rashad Bateman. I want him to be something other than what I'm getting right now from Traylon Burks. If he's anything less than good, consistently good, he is going to be a huge target. Now maybe that's going to be the case anyway without the offseason hype.
I was going to say, is that because Calvin Ridley compared him to Julio, AJ, and T.O., or is that because he was a first-round pick?
Well, because I think some of that's true. Billy Madison, though, on YouTube, not that Billy Madison, but the other Billy Madison, says, I don't know what's worse, Ridley saying all of that or Hopkins speaking German. They're just trying to find ways to be a good teammate. And also, these things are true. He is incredibly gifted as an athlete. The GPS tracking that Callahan's talked about on him before, he's one of the fastest players consistently, even when they max out their workloads on them because they have the ability to track that. He has been one of the best or the biggest revelations on the team through the early goings. We're all talking about Traylon Burks so much in ways that I just think Traylon Burks, it's giving it more, it's creating more of a monster than need be. Because my thing would be Traylon Burks' approach. He's focused on God, his upcoming child, and how he's going to get better at practice today. Calvin Ridley means well. It's not like it's a bad, I don't want to criticize Calvin Ridley for gassing up his teammate. That's not what I'm trying to do. But I just think that there is so much oxygen already taken. Because honestly, and I would tell Slay this, I don't think the Slay thing's great for Traylon Burks. Because what happens if it blows up? What happens if it blows up?
The pressure's already there, though. That's the thing. He's a first-round pick who hasn't been available or productive in each of his first 2 years in the league. So I don't see it inflating. I don't see the balloon of pressure inflating anymore because DeAndre Hopkins and Calvin Ridley and Ron Slay are saying good things about Traylon Burks and inflating his confidence, which maybe dropped off a little bit at the end of last year.
There's no question.
Because then he was available, and then he was dropping passes towards the tail end of last year after missing all that time due to injuries. So I struggle to think that it increases the pressure anymore. The pressure is there. He is a first-round pick who has not lived up to the billing of a first-round pick, and this feels like a very make-or-break situation for him.
I'm so used to just the curse of Titans first-round picks at this point that first-round pick doesn't really mean anything to me anymore. I'm watching the ghost of Caleb Farley wander around out there and try and make plays. I'm watching Peter Skoronski try and break the curse of Titans' recent first-round picks. I don't know where the hell Isaiah Wilson is in the world, but I know he's not here. So, like, my expectation for Titans first-round pick, it's a little mutated in the last couple of seasons, which is why I probably don't assign that same level of pressure to first-round pick. Well, he's a Titans first-round pick, though, and those have sucked of late.
Maybe we're desensitized to it, but it's no secret the Isaiah Wilson thing is a colossal failure of a first-round pick, right? If you get nothing out of Caleb Farley, that is a colossal failure of a first-round pick.
They could arguably be those two, Farley and Wilson, the two worst first-round picks by percentage of playing time that have ever existed in the NFL, and both have come from one franchise. Caleb Farley has appeared in 12 total games.
Well, that would be a very deep conversation that a lot of fan bases would like to have a hand in. So let's not open that can of worms. But John on the F&M Bank chat says the inflation of pressure came from y'all asking about him all the time.
Well, you're asking about him all the time because he is a first-round pick, because you have that investment. And also, the thing that expedites X level of pressure on Traylon Burks is always, always, always the fact that A.J. Brown left here, went to a Super Bowl the next year, and broke all kind of single-season receiving records for the Philadelphia Eagles, which is a long and storied franchise. So it's always that, even as we are now 3 years removed from the A.J. trade. So you bring up pressure. Let's hear from, because you talked to him yesterday while I was out at practice, Kevin Dyson. The good Dr. Dyson was on the radio show, and through the prism of Kevin Dyson's own experience dealing in a pressurized situation where you underperform on the whole, even though you're the most famous person on the two most famous plays in the Titans era of football. Kevin Dyson has pretty good insight on what kind of pressure Traylon Burks is up against.
Actually, I think it's a little bit more pressure. Obviously, he's a former first-round pick. Eyes are on him. The assumption is you got Hopkins and Ridley going to be a starter. Boyd's going to be your three, right? You assume based on the money spent and guys being brought in. So to me, the eyes are on him from a different standpoint. So I actually think there's a little bit more pressure in that he has to build a name, right? Because he doesn't know his fate, right? Because we all do it. Every player will tell you they do it. You locker room you locker count. You try to see, well, if we only keep 6 receivers, I make this much money. He's a free agent. All those different things, all the doubts are coming to his mindset. And so I would argue that he's feeling more pressure in the sense that he doesn't know where he stands with the organization based on the moves they have made here in the last several months. And so with that being said, I think he's going to go in this offseason. And I would assume he has to go in this offseason like I'm auditioning, whether it be for the Titans or the other 31 teams in the National Football League. This is an audition. So he has to get his mind right and prepared and perform at a level where he has value, whether it be I get released and I need to get a job, I get traded, or if the Titans have plans for me to be in that rotation. So he's got a lot on his plate, on his mind, I am sure. I'm sure him and his agent have had conversations, whether it be with Red or with other organizations. I know between each other they've had these conversations. And so it remains to be seen. I think we'll see how he handles it going into the first preseason game. I'm assuming he's probably going to be with that second group. Again, I'm just making that assumption based on the moves and what I'm hearing coming out of the OTAs and things of that nature, that he's going to be with that second group of receivers. And so he's got to basically go out there and perform and show his value not only to the Titans organization but anybody that's watching film.
That is Dr. Kevin Dyson on the radio show yesterday. You can check out the full interview that Lucas did with him when I ran out to the practice field on the podcast feed or via the YouTube channel, wherever you can get your podcasts. Make sure you subscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe to the Buck Rising Show. Phone call, 615-737-1045. That's how you join the discussion. You have thoughts on your wide receivers. It doesn't just have to be Traylon Burks, even though we spent a lot of time here talking about him today. Alex is in sales.
Hey, so I think I completely agree with KD. I think Burks has more pressure with the additions because there's less snaps, and each snap he gets, each ball, each target, more and more is going to be placed on that. The other thing, at every NFL organization in America right now, every offensive skill player is talked about more so than normal because they're in shorts and T-shirts. They all look good right now. If you're an NFL wide receiver and you don't look good and you're not impressing people and working hard in shorts and T-shirts, then there's a major issue. You shouldn't be in a camp. So I think it happens every year with every team, right? There's that OTA hero. This is going to be the stud that breaks away, and then he doesn't even make the team because when you put on the pads and contact, it's a different ballgame. So I think that's with his skill set and how he's produced as a Titan and the issues he's had, lack of physicality, that's why he's shining now, because there is no physicality, or there's limited physicality. But he's boom or bust at this point, and that's a great scenario for a fourth wide receiver. So it's in good shape.
Thanks for the call, Alex. We appreciate it. To his point about OTA superstars, I saw Mason Kinsey catch a 17-yard pass yesterday and celebrate like he won the Super Bowl. So
leave Mason Kinsey alone.
He caught the 17-yard pass. I was very complimentary of Kinsey yesterday. It's just, the celebration, a little gratuitous in OTAs.
But it is an interesting thought, right? That the pressure is amplified, not because Calvin Ridley's talking about him, not because DeAndre Hopkins is talking about him or Ron Slay is talking about him, but because he is a first-round pick, and the path to the field is a lot slimmer, a lot more narrow in 2024 than it has been the last couple of years.
His opportunity with the new coaching staff is a fascinating one. Because, are you of the opinion that Traylon Burks is closer to done with the Titans than having a future here?
Based on what we've seen,
sure.
Yes, that doesn't mean it can't change.
Right, which is why I think he is as interesting. They've got a bunch of players that have fascinating storyline arcs this season. Hopkins, we've talked about this, and Boyd are on one-year deals. There is for sure a path to Traylon Burks seeing, if not a starting role, that of a significant contributor. Why can't he get the Rashad Bateman deal that he just signed? I know I've made Rashad Bateman references twice today, but Bateman just signed a pretty cost-effective contract, and I know his circumstance a little different, but he's also been kind of unavailable.
What about the Jawan Jennings deal?
Any extension for Traylon Burks here would be cost-effective, not just based on the production to date, but I think he's got to prove it even beyond whatever he proves in this season. I think plenty of teams, including the Titans, are going to look at him and say, "All right, well, we'll give you this to see if you can do it again." So I like the Jawan Jennings deal. It makes a lot of sense, and they'll still have finances to work with in 2025. But I don't think Traylon Burks is done here, which is, well, I don't think Traylon Burks is done yet here, which is why I think the pressure is at its greatest, because we're not just talking about this opportunity directly in front of him. We're talking about for years to come.
So Jawan Jennings, for context, got a 2-year contract worth $15.4 million in total money, $10.5 million guaranteed. In the regular season last year, he had 19 catches for 265 yards, 1 touchdown. That was in 13 games. Obviously, what he did in the playoffs, specifically in the Super Bowl with 2 total touchdowns, has a huge impact there. But you talk about team friendly. If Traylon Burks puts out anything in 2024, anything with a semblance of what Jawan Jennings has done year to year, and DeAndre Hopkins' contract expires, to be able to bring Traylon Burks back on a very team friendly extension and have a bigger path to playing time in 2025, then suddenly you could potentially be getting production of a receiver worth much more than $10.5 million guaranteed over 2 years.
615-737-1045. Last call for phone calls coming up next. Welcome back to the show. Last call for phone calls. If you got them, 615-737-1045 is the number. You got Brad Hopkins, Blaine Bishop coming up next. And I've seen Blaine out at OTAs. I'm sure B-Hop has made it to one or two at this point, and nobody better to give you analysis on the Titans than the two guys that used to play for the Titans. William is a brain surgeon listening to this show? Surely not. William, is this true?
True. It's underground though, so I don't want to get in trouble. But yeah.
Okay, so you're like the people on South Beach that maybe do the BBLs, the Brazilian butt lifts, but instead of like filler, they're putting concrete in somebody's butt.
You got it. You got it.
That sounds right.
Silicone, all that.
Okay.
I work on the medulla oblongata.
What do you got?
All right. Well, I'm a fan of Burks. I really think he's a pretty good receiver. Just needs more time, like Ridley was saying, just to get the feel of it and everything. But if someone goes down, there's no doubt in my mind Nick Westbrook-Akina is going in. I mean, can you not argue that? He's consistent, and Will needs consistency as a young quarterback right now. Burks is fifth in my opinion.
Appreciate the call, William, and the transition. I said, surely there's not a brain surgeon listening to this nonsense. How much dumber would you get if you're a brain surgeon listening to this for 3 hours a day? NWI.
Not out there yesterday.
No. Does he get to, or I guess let's look at it this way. With the new coaching staff, because NWI had earned the implicit trust of the previous coaching staff, yes? And the trust of the quarterback. Like Will Levis found NWI. NWI was pretty reliable for Will Levis last year and Ryan Tannehill. So do you go into with a baseline of a new coaching staff, even though the quarterback hasn't really changed, of, okay, Burks and NWI, whoever wins, you're wide receiver 4, as opposed to past experiences with a previous coaching staff? Because I almost look at them and say, the two of them, okay, now you get the opportunity to determine who is going to be wide receiver 4 in this new look where you don't have any preconceived notions about reliability or availability or what have you beyond what you've watched on film prepping for the job and the team that you're now going to take over.
And if there is carryover truly from Brian Callahan's time in Cincinnati, if Boyd, Ridley, and Hopkins are able to stay consistently healthy, it stands to reason there's not going to be a ton of opportunity for 4 and 5, because that wasn't the case in Cincinnati. Those guys got the major bulk of the reps and the catches and the yards and the touchdowns. I mean, can you name a receiver? Name a Cincinnati receiver not named T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, or Jamar Chase. Tight ends don't count in the Brian Callahan, Zach Taylor era of the Bengals.
What's that little white dude's name? Trent something?
Irwin?
No, maybe. Was there an Irwin running around? I think there was a Sherfield running around.
Trenton Irwin is who you're thinking
Trenton
of.
Irwin?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, him.
So, yeah, there you go.
You didn't think I could do it. Eat it.
And you talk about Nick Westbrook-Akine-like numbers last season. 25 catches, 316 yards, and a touchdown for Trenton Irwin. And T. Higgins missed a lot of time last season. So I don't know how much opportunity there's going to be beyond those three anyway.
Well, which makes it interesting for Phillips, for Jaquan Jackson as we work further,
Right.
Kyrus Jackson as we work further through the wide receiver depth chart. Okay, polls. This is what would sound if he had a lobotomy.
Presented by Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer. Who is the most talked about player of the Titans offseason? Scoob says, obviously, Will Levis. Tyrone says, I'm tired of hearing about him, but Will Levis. Karen says, Will Levis and J.C. Latham. Kenneth says, Will Levis. Charlie says a mixture of Will Levis and J.C. Latham. Yup, on Twitter says, Will Levis. Not the answer we were looking for, which to this point, we have talked about Traylon Burks more than Will Levis.
Yes. Yes.
It's close.
Which makes me hate myself. I hate that we have talked more about, and it's no disrespect to Traylon, but I hate that we have talked more about Traylon Burks than we have about Will Levis. I also hate that we did 20 minutes on a guard earlier this week, but I can't have my way about anything, it seems.
Are the New York Jets contenders or pretenders? 77% say pretenders.
contenders. They have to be.
Are you buying the Traylon Burks hype? 57.8% say no.
But not as lopsided as I thought it might be, to be honest with you. I'm not buying the hype, but because I've already been somebody who has bought the hype on Traylon Burks, I'm just going to kind of sit back and wait. I want no hype. I don't want any Traylon Burks hype. I'm allergic to the hype that Calvin Ridley was trying to give off yesterday because I'm like, no, just let him do it before you call him Calvin Ridley or Julio Jones, AJ Brown, and damn Terrell Owens.
Let's throw what other big-bodied? Can we throw Hines Ward in there? I don't know.
Hines Ward? What?
I guess he was on the shorter side.
That would be the second Titans player without an ACL on the roster.
I buy that this coaching staff, if Traylon Burks is healthy, will be able to put him in more advantageous situations than the previous coaching staff. I do buy that.
Sure.
What do you want Will Levis to improve the most in 2024? Eric says decision-making. Jacob says accuracy.
What do we want him to be most focused on in 2024?
What do we want Will Levis to improve on the most in 2024? The answers have been either decision-making or accuracy. Eldon says taking the easy yards to get the ball out quickly. He missed a lot of checkdowns for firsts looking for a big play last year.
I would like him to focus on the Calm app. Can I give him a copy of my Calm app that I use to keep my blood pressure down from time to time?
So meditation.
Meditation. I would like him to focus on meditation or just peace of mind is not the right word, but just kind of not flying off the handle seems too extreme. That makes him seem like he's so erratic. But just meditation, I think, would be beneficial for him because to slow everything down would be good. The same thing we talked about Trevor Lawrence, the pressure in the pocket, a muddy pocket speeds him up. Levis is one of those guys. You heard our guest earlier from the 33rd team, Dan Pizzuta, talk about Lawrence and the struggles that he faces when the pocket gets muddy. How much better Richardson is with pressure than Lawrence or Levis at this point. If Levis can get himself to slow down, it will inevitably help everything else speed up.
Those are the polls.
Excellent. That's the show. Appreciate you guys hanging out. DTag716 on YouTube says, nice work on the hairline, Buck. Where did you get it? I got it at Silk Clinic, which you can check out on my Instagram if you're so inclined. No free ads, but we appreciate you guys stopping by. Check out the podcast. Prime time tonight at 7 p.m. See you there.